guys want to hear a funny story that it'll sound like it has nothing to do with anything? It goes back to 2013. The Steelers were in London. They had just lost to the Vikings at Wembley Stadium, and that put them at 0-4. Okay? This was probably the most humbling single moment of Mike Tomlin's NFL career. This was a team that was loaded. Ben Roethlisberger, Troy Polamalu, just everybody on the list that you'd want to have on that list from that era was on that team, and they were 0-4. And as his press conference ended, he left the room first and then opened the door and held it open for us reporters who'd flown over to cover it, and thanked each of us for coming over, over the ocean. I couldn't believe it. Good afternoon to you. Good Tuesday afternoon. I'm Dejan Kovacevic of DK Pittsburgh Sports. This is the new Double Shot show that comes your way at 4 p.m. Eastern every weekday. That version of Tomlin you don't want, okay? I'm often joking, and I've done it ever since that day in London, that Tomlin is annoying when he loses. He's doubly annoying when he wins because he gets kind of full of himself. He gets that bravado about him. And yes, he'll do things like the fake punt, like going for it at midfield, like other stuff that happened in Landover this weekend. But that's his best self. That's his best self on that football field and when he's making other decisions. If you want another vibe, so to speak, of where Tomlin is right now, with this football team being at 7-2, listen, please, to how he handled a question this afternoon over on the South Side about facing Deontay Johnson for the first time this weekend when they meet the Ravens.
To be honest with you, I hadn't thought a lot about it. He's not on a lot of their video, and so, at this stage of the week, I don't know that I've weighed, what he might mean to the matchup. They got more significant pieces with larger roles that are occupying my attention at this part of the week.
See, now that I presented it that way, there's a lot to unpack in that little clip, isn't there? There's the whole volunteers, not hostages thing, because Deontay wanted out. Deontay had asked for a trade. Okay, here's your trade. What do you think of Charlotte, North Carolina this time of year? What do you think of, you're coming in to be part of the Steelers-Ravens rivalry, but you're not playing very much. I had a hard time finding you on film. He always leaves himself an out whenever he'll take a little jab like this. But make no mistake, that was a jab. That's when your team's head coach is really just all the way there. He has to be. I think he understands that he wasn't enough of that in recent seasons. And the team, I believe, as a result, lost some of that vital swagger. Look, I'm not going to be one of these people, and I've seen, heard, and read a bunch of it lately that's going to jump on this Coach of the Year bandwagon. Coach of the Year means Coach of the Year, as in the year. We're not there. The Steelers played 9 games. They have almost half the schedule left. But I do feel comfortable saying that to this point, he's been what you need him to be. He'll drive you nuts occasionally. He'll make a move where you'll go, what? But you're seeing this team carry on his personality when they go out there. And that's not nothing. When we come back, Chris Halleck.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Joined now by Chris Halleck. Chris, trying to figure out or recall how many times or how many different players Mike Tomlin has labeled Mr. something in the past, as he did with Lamar Jackson Sunday in Landover. He did it 10 times today in the press conference?
Surprisingly, only 3. I actually did keep count. In our Steelers feed, my coverage of the press conference, I actually kept Mr. Jackson counter because it felt necessary. And surprisingly, only 3 times. I thought it was
only 3 times, but he's done it for Nick Chubb. He's done it for a very select few other players along the way. The respect that he has for Jackson is legit. The respect that everybody has for Jackson is legit. This isn't a debating point anymore the way it was for a couple of years, remember?
Yeah.
This is a real live multiple-time MVP in the National Football League. But at the same time, and I promise you, this has something to do with Tomlin bringing up this Mr. stuff out of nowhere. The Steelers are good against Lamar. They're better than anybody against Lamar. 2-4, was it 66.8?
66.8 passer rating against him.
66.8 passer rating he is against Pittsburgh. And I have a feeling that this head coach who thinks about everything, especially as it relates to atmospheric conditions in his locker room, who's going to be asking what questions, what are they going to say? Chris, you and I see him constantly navigating the locker room. He's actually walking through there while we're asking questions. You don't see that from any other head coach or manager in professional sports. He does it. He's comfortable with it. He feels that's his element as much as it is anybody else's. And he's going to be wary, I believe, of everyone saying, hey, why is it that you guys are so good against Lamar? What is your magic trick? Especially now that they just did it to Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and for good reason, because I understand the numbers that Lamar Jackson has against the Steelers are not great. Like you said, 2-4, passer rating of 66.8. His completion percentage is 59%. It's not much. It's not reminiscent of a 2-time MVP, and last year definitely deserving it in my opinion. But oh gosh, the success can't be denied either. And so whenever they get into this week, it's just it is a different element. It's not like Lamar Jackson is amazing against the NFC because they never see him. The Steelers see Lamar Jackson just as much as the Browns and the Bengals do, but Mike Tomlin, for some reason, he carries himself a little different in these particular weeks.
He does.
And I definitely think the team feeds off of that. And so whatever that is when it comes to the way that they're motivated going into the week, the way they're prepared going into the week, it all carries into that stadium. And I think that's one of the reasons why they've at least been able to have some success against him for sure.
He wants them to be, the word isn't afraid. He wants them to be wary enough of what Lamar can do so that they don't lose that sharpness that they had in shutting down Daniels, especially when it comes to Daniels' mobility. Daniels, he ran for 4 yards.
Yeah.
Okay. And then after that, Keanu Benton told me this in the locker room. He said, by the time the second quarter came around, he didn't even want it anymore. Meaning, not the game. He wanted the game. He's a competitor. He didn't want designed runs. He didn't want to tuck and go. When we saw that he did try it, he tried it obviously the one time late in the game. It was Keanu, of course, who shut him down. They need, I think any competitive entity needs to fear at least a little bit what it is that you're facing in order to be at your best. You have to have if I don't do this and I don't do it at my highest level, that person's going to beat me. But realistically here, even with Alex Highsmith out, and he is going to be out, by the way, that was made official by Tomlin. He's only going to miss a couple of weeks. Even in that setting, you need your edge rushers to do what they did against Washington, don't you? You need TJ Watt, and in this case, if Nick Herbig is available, if not Jeremiah Moon or Preston Smith, to come in off the edges and make sure that quarterback doesn't go anywhere. If that means you don't get sacks, if that means you don't get hits and hurries, fine, but don't let him go anywhere.
Yeah, the blueprint is the same, but they have to be even more focused on that attention to detail when they're facing Lamar Jackson, because for as dangerous and dynamic as Jaden Daniels has been, Lamar Jackson's been doing this for several years now, and he's won 2 MVPs doing it. The main thing that I really want people to try to remember about Lamar Jackson, especially here recently, is that when the Steelers faced him the one time last year, Lamar played a lot better than the stats indicated.
Oh, I knew you were going to do this. This is what happens when me and him sit in the car for 8 total hours over the weekend. He's going to come up with all kinds of excuses for why Lamar didn't have a great game. Like, go ahead, let him hear it.
But it's legitimate. I mean, he had at least, I swear it had to have been at least 5 drops in that game.
I think it was higher. I think it was close to double digits. The Ravens receivers in that game, all of them, I don't just mean the wide receivers, all of them were embarrassing.
Yes, it was terrible. And so after watching the film of the Commanders game, there were a few, and we even noticed it during the game, there were a few times where Commanders receivers dropped passes and they were wide open. It was almost reminiscent of that game that against the Ravens and Lamar Jackson last year. They can't afford to do that either. They have to contain Lamar on the ground for sure. You have to not let him get outside the pocket and make plays with his legs. But at the same time, they got to make sure that they're covering everything on the back end too, because they cannot play the way that they did against the Commanders. Because if it's a game in which these Ravens receivers don't drop passes and don't let them have balls hit them in the face mask like Rashad Bateman did against the Browns, if it's a game that they actually make catches, this could be really, really difficult to win.
Yeah, there's a lot of differences besides the obvious stuff, the experience and the achievements between Lamar and Jaden Daniels. To me, the biggest one was that what I did not see Daniels doing Sunday, and this is something that Lamar just does brilliantly, and by the way, he did it brilliantly against the Bengals the other night, which is he'll roll out, he'll draw people toward him, and he'll throw right over them. He'll flip right over them. I didn't see Washington even try that. And that might be second level stuff for Jaden Daniels that come later in his career or whatever, but Lamar is a threat that way. And the Steelers will need all, not just Patrick Queen, but all of their sideline to sideline weapons out there as well. Do you go after Lamar in any way? Do you spy him in any way? Do you stick with Landon Roberts, for example, versus Peyton Wilson? Do you prioritize making sure that he doesn't get away up the middle, or do you prioritize the sideline to sideline, the supersonic speed of Wilson?
Well, I think, as you reported after the Commanders game, I think they're going to stick with Landon Roberts. And
Landon's
honestly,
won the job, yeah. But there are opponents in specific circumstances related to them, yeah.
Right. And I think this week is another week that Landon Roberts should be out there more. I'm not necessarily saying that because of Lamar Jackson, but because of Derrick Henry. Because for as much as Mike Tomlin talked up Mr. Jackson today, he also gave a lot of credit to Derrick Henry, saying that he can grind down an opponent and then out of nowhere pull off an 80-yard run because he's a home run hitter too with track speed. So they have to be able to contain Derrick Henry too. This is a dangerous offense. Let's just and yes. Lamar is what really helps put them over the top. If they don't have Lamar and they have some other Joe Schmo back there like Tyler Huntley or whoever else, there's some dangerous elements too still with a mobile quarterback, but it's Lamar's ability to be dangerous with his legs, dangerous with his arm. Now you add Derrick Henry into the fold, but Lamar definitely puts them over the top. But I would think you have to spy Jackson, at least on like third downs and stuff like that. But I would just say do what you've been doing for the past however many years you've been playing it, because it does seem to be working. Even with all the credit that I give to Lamar for the way he played in last year's game, they still won the game. Those receivers still have to make catches. So if you continue to do enough on offense, this should be a game in which they score enough points that they can just contain Lamar, not try to go all out to stop him.
You know what's funny? There's so many different fun aspects of this specific matchup, just in general. I mean, I shouldn't say specific, Steelers versus Ravens, that it all ends up coming down to at the end of the week, we all just go, oh, it's just going to be decided by 3 points because it's always decided by 3 points. Well, guess what? This is the one year you're okay with it being decided by 3 points because Chris Boswell is still Boz, and I don't know what's happening to Justin Tucker, right? It's crazy. No. Guys, we'll be right back with J1Q.
Safety is a habit. Gun safety and responsible storage are no different. Help prevent gun accidents, misuse, and theft. Keep firearms safe and secure when not in use. For safe storage options, visit projectchildsafe.org.
Yesterday's J1Q took us to Australia. Today's takes us across another pond to Francisco Santos in Porto, Portugal.
Hi DK. With Dante Jackson getting hurt, JPJ having some issues in these last couple of games, and Minka not having that splash play factor that we're used to see from him, even though he's unreplaceable in our secondary, how are we feeling about the state of our secondary entering this crucial part of the season? I'm a little bit concerned about it. Could guys like Cam Sutton and others step up and make the secondary better?
The answer to the last part, Francisco, to me is undeniable, and that's yes. I saw signs from Sutton specifically in Landover that had me remembering how good Sutton can be when he's on his game. You're going to recall the play he made along the one sideline where he just waited for the ball to come into the receiver and then just timed his contact perfectly and brutally to make sure that that catch wasn't completed. That's elite corner play, regardless of whether you have him in an outside spot or a slot or whatever. That's all good stuff. I had a talk with Sutton after the game. His head seems to be in the right place. He acknowledged being emotional at being back on the field for the first time since his half-season suspension. He seemed, and again, keeping all of this stuff in the proper and fair context of the overall life stuff, he seemed to have gotten that out of his system. All the nerves, all the emotions, and everything else that went into his situation. That's probably a good thing, because you don't want that to be your Baltimore game. And again, he was good. So was Beanie, but Cam Sutton is Cam Sutton. So yes, he can make a difference. I believe that he will make a difference. For the rest of the group, I guess that's going to be up to Dante Jackson's hamstring, isn't it? You know, I asked Dante after the game how he's doing and whether or not he expects his athletes. They always have some sense for this. They always have an awareness of their own injuries. They can tell you, hey, it looks like this is going to be, this is bad or this isn't bad or whatever. And he said, I feel like I'm going to be, held back or slowed down in practice this week. That's what he told me. And this was on Sunday while he's just sitting there at his locker stall. And today, Mike Tomlin said of Jackson that he expects that he'll be slowed down at practice this week and he'd probably be available to play in the game. Now, that's obviously really good news because you want him and you need him out there. As far as Joey Porter Jr., you kind of casually went through him like, JPJ's having his struggles, and you're right. But when Joey has struggles that involve taking penalties, if you think about this so far in his career, he has found a way to bounce back almost immediately. He hasn't allowed anything to carry over week to week or into some big slump where you go, oh no, did we pick the wrong guy? Or is he Artie Burns or something? You don't do that with Joey because he has a confidence. Not to keep connecting everything to his dad, but he's his dad's son, right? I don't know how a Porter would lack confidence in any scenario. And sure enough, there's Joey after the game in the locker room in Landover, just whooping it up with the guys. And we got the big W. You didn't see him sitting there pouting over his penalties or, the points that he cost his team. He's going to be fine. That's my expectation. He's going to be fine. But the secondary is going to face a very different type of challenge here, as Chris and I were just discussing in the previous segment, in Lamar Jackson, in having to track Mark Andrews, the big tight end, in having to be aware of late developing plays, following guys when they come back to Lamar Jackson to try to give him an extra outlet whenever he's scrambling back there. It's different. It's just different. And no, they did not carry themselves well against Terry McLaurin, but they're not the first or the last people to get burned by McLaurin. What a football player that is. I appreciate the question, Francisco. I appreciate everybody checking out the new Double Shot Show. We'll be back with another one of these tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern.